Hey folks, welcome back. Time for our second video with the new lighting. This time I'm going to expand our net a little bit. So last time we looked at the 3x3x2 and 3x3x4 cuboids. Now we're going to look at the odd layered cuboids, the 3x3x5 and 3x3x7. I may not show a full solve of the 3x3x7 just for time considerations, but I will show you a walkthrough of 3x3x5. Given the techniques that you learned from the last video, there's relatively few new things you need to know for the 3x3x5, but nonetheless, I think it's useful to see the strategy in action, so I'll do a fairly quick walkthrough solve just to show you how it's done. Again, I'm keeping my techniques as simple as possible, minimal algorithms, just to help you get started, and then you can refine the technique and use your own variations if you like. And before that, I'll do a little bit of a review of these puzzles as well, so you can see both of them in action. So both these 3x3x puzzles are from WitEden. Unfortunately, Fanshin hasn't made nice stickerless versions for us, and the WitEden stickerless ones are apparently not very good. They seem to have not really worked out a way to keep the same level of quality between the stickered and stickerless versions. So actually, even though I love stickerless puzzles for convenience, I have bought all the cuboids from WitEden so far in stickered form. And the stickers, I have to say, are holding up pretty well, so I haven't had any bad luck yet. So we'll look at the 3x3x5 first. That's just what the box looks like. It's got this list of things. Presumably they were supposed to tick one of them and just didn't do it for whatever reason. You can see they also make these cuboids with sort of the circle puzzle element as well, different variations of those. And they give you a little preview of the main property of note of these two odd layered cuboids, which is that they can shapeshift. So if I turn 90 degrees, I can actually carry on turning with these guys, which is pretty cool. And that does add a lot of interest to the solve. I often make stupid mistakes on these puzzles because I'm still not very good at shape-shifting stuff, but that just adds to the fun and the challenge of it. So definitely not a bad thing at all. And you can see the WitEden logo there on the top. And this is the normal color scheme that you'd expect. So yellow opposite white, orange opposite red, green opposite blue, etc., etc. Okay, so how is the puzzle? Well, it turns just fine, actually. There's a noticeable increase in friction on the inner layers, in particular, these layers second from the top and bottom. They're a little bit grindy, but I kind of expect that because in order for these puzzles to work, you have these very long extensions. You can kind of see here. So each piece on the top layer has a long stalk going into the core of the puzzle, and that stalk only gets longer and flimsier on the bigger cuboids as well. So it kind of makes sense that the outer layers feel a bit loose, and the inner ones are kind of squished together by the force coming down from the layer on top. So, it does make sense. It's a little bit grindy there in the middle, but it really doesn't affect the solving enjoyment so far. They are very clacky and very loud, so you don't want to do these on the train, per se, or on the plane. But for home solving, definitely recommended. You have to be a little bit careful, though, when you buy these, because they do have a lot of variant cuboids with WitEden, and some of them are I-cuboids, where they are not symmetric around the center. So, on this one, the core is right directly in the middle of the whole volume of the puzzle. They have others where, if you imagine where the core on a 3x3 would be, like somewhere over here, it's kind of more in that direction. So you get different kind of shape-shifting, and it's a different solve. So if you don't want that, then just be careful you're getting the right one. The same applies, by the way, to the 2x2x that they sell. Just make sure you're getting the one that you want, either an I-cuboid or otherwise. So, yeah, not much more to say besides the fact it's a little bit sticky on these second to last layers. The pieces are a little bit pointy, so watch your eyeballs if something pops out. And it's feels quite cheap and quite clacky, which is a standard kind of part of the WitEden experience, unfortunately. But it's still a lot of fun to solve, and I do still recommend it for your collection. And I think it's pretty much the only way to go for a 3x3x5. Calvin's does sell a bunch of variant cuboids on the 3x3x5 dimensions. They make like an X cube kind of knockoff and all kinds of stuff. But I've heard that they're not so great quality-wise. They make a nice 4x4x6, which I've shown you before, and 4x4x5. But I can't vouch for the 3x3x that they make. So just buyer beware. Check some comments and reviews elsewhere. I was thinking to get the 3x3x5 Fisher cube from Calvin's at some point. So when I do that, I'll of course report back and let you know how it is. But for a standard 3x3x5, I think WitEden is probably the way to go. So without further ado, let's do a bit of a scramble here. So what I do with these, with any shape-shifting puzzle really, is I scramble it up without shape-shifting turns, first of all, just to kind of mix up the colors a bit. Because once you start shape-shifting, some of the pieces kind of will stay together because of the way that they're kind of extended from the core, or at least that's my understanding. So I just wanted to try and get some pre-scrambling done before we get to that stage. Okay, do a bit more of this, a little bit of that. I'm not going to go, super crazy here because I'm not trying to impress anyone with my solving skills, just to kind of show you how the puzzle works in practice and give you some techniques to use if you're getting stuck when you're trying to solve this thing. But yeah, I don't know, I put off getting cuboids in my collection for a long time. I had this preconception that they weren't that interesting. I wanted stuff that was really crazy and icosahedrons and, the crazy Varipuzzle stuff and all that. And then I bought a bunch of them just to kind of, out of a sense of obligation, if anything. And I found that I really enjoy them a lot. This might be my favorite category of puzzles now. I just pick them up and solve them all the time. Okay, so that's probably good enough. Now we're going to do some shape-shifting. So I'll just start making 90-degree turns and trying to mess things up as much as I possibly can. I'll do a bit of these and a bit of that. Some of this. Now, alignment is pretty important on this puzzle, so just be aware when you are mixing up and solving it. Don't try and corner cut or anything. You'll just end up being very upset by the results. I have to say, despite my sort of clumsiness sometimes with these puzzles, I haven't had any popping so far. So well done, WitEden, on that front. They are reasonably robust. The 3x3x7 is a little bit more harrowing because the extensions are just that much longer. There we go. Okay, I think that's pretty good. What do you think? Looks pretty good to me. Okay, that's a 3x3x5 all scrambled up. Looks pretty cool. Definitely the kind of puzzle that, I think would impress people who are not accustomed to twisty puzzles, don't know much about them. They would think, my God, how are you going to solve that? And certainly there's a nice surprise element when you go from a nice contained looking tower to this craziness. Okay, so before we get into that, actually, I'll just quickly run you through the 3x3x7 as well. Not through a solve or a scramble, but I'll just tell you a bit about the puzzle and show it off here a bit. So this, once again, is the standard 3x3x7 from WitEden, fully proportional, as with the 3x3x5. You can see it's very long. It's actually hard to keep in the frame. But this is a really, really great puzzle. I have to say, I've been so impressed with how this performs. You can hear it's even louder and clackier than the 3x3x5. But actually, it moves great. It's really satisfying to play with because, when you make these long turns, it's something just very satisfying about slapping these into place with a big R2, And again, I haven't had any pops, haven't had anything fall out. I've really been impressed with these. And you do still feel that additional friction on the inner layers, but it's really hasn't affected anything negatively. So I really highly recommend this. And also, the solve itself is really enjoyable. I mean, it's just a bigger, higher order version of the 3x3x5, basically. But, that extra layer adds some really interesting kind of, I don't know, there's more opportunities to make mistakes. The shape-shifting looks more impressive even because you've got these extensions just sticking way out into space like this. So I really do think the extra layers add something on the higher order puzzles. And in particular with this one, it just looks really impressive and it's really fun to play with. So again, there's nothing really new here in terms of the solving, so I'm not going to make you sit through all that. But I did want to show off this puzzle and I highly recommend that you buy it. I think it cost me about $21, something like that. I ended up buying this and a bunch of cuboids directly from WitEden on AliExpress. They're more expensive than somewhere like Z-Cube. But Z-Cube doesn't really carry everything. In fact, there's a lot of things from WitEden that they don't have at all. But everything's on the WitEden store. So that was definitely the right place to go for some of these. And yeah, everything was delivered efficiently and in great shape. So I can't complain too much. Oh yeah, look at how far that sticks out. Looks cool, doesn't it? So that's the 3x3x7. Just a quick look. Just get it. It's great. All right, back to this monster. So if we compare this to the 3x3x4, what do we need to do with this? Well, obviously we have an additional layer, but the difference that makes is more significant than you might first think. I mean, obviously it can shapeshift, but also we have to change our solving strategy. So because we have an additional layer in the middle, we can't do two successive 3x3x2 solves in the same way because we've got an extra layer. So then what do you do with that extra one, right? We'd have two 3x3x2s and one left over. So what we actually do is when we first attack the scramble, we will solve this as if it was a 3x3, okay? But only just getting the bottom layer and the top layer sort of mostly solved. We don't need to go the whole way through the 3x3 solve, but most of the way through it. And that will return this object to the cuboid shape, okay? No longer shapeshifted. And from there, we want to make sure that before we start attacking the other layers, we have the middle layer fully solved. And then, much like the 3x3x4, through the rest of the solve, we make sure not to disrupt that middle layer. Otherwise, we get to the end, and I actually did this my first time out. I had the rest of the puzzle solved, and then a screwed up middle layer, and I'd start over. So we don't want to do that. But yeah, that's basically it. So we keep that middle layer solved. Then we do the second and third layers as a 3x3x2, and then the outer layers as 3x3x2, and then address any parities. And that's really it. But that step of resolving the shapeshifting is a whole, pretty lengthy addition compared to just a standard 3x3x4. So there's a lot going on there, actually. So I think it's a really great puzzle to have in the collection for that reason. It's not just a simple step up from the 3x3x4. There's a whole other stage of the solve to deal with, which is more interesting. But, okay, so we're going to start this as a 3x3. So that means we want to form a white cross here around the white center, okay? So let's look for our edge pieces. We've got a blue edge here, which we can rotate into place like so. Then we have orange here, which needs to go next to that. Once again, just keeping our color scheme in mind is helpful. Like this. Okay, orange, blue, and then we need red here, which is actually over here. So we can drop that in like so. And then we've got green as well, which we can drop in much the same way. Okay, so now we got a white cross. And we want to bring in our corners next. So let's see what we got here. Here's a red and green corner. So we'll bring that up to the top layer. And we need to place it in here. And that'll actually bring out this corner, which we need elsewhere on the puzzle. And just with a standard RU R prime, we can put that into place. Now this piece obviously is not out, but is not in rather, but don't worry about that. We'll come back to that when we do our our first 3x3x2 solve. We'll resolve these two layers, so we don't worry about that now. Let's see what we got here. So this is our green and orange, and that can go over here, like so. Now we got two corners in place. Now we have blue and red, which can go here. So we'll just need to rotate this corner around. Now again, I'm just trying to keep this simple, so I'm not doing anything sophisticated here. Yep, one corner left to go, which is right here. You'll notice that the puzzle does catch quite a bit when it's in shapeshifted form, but it's really not that bothersome. Normally that kind of thing would bug me, but for some reason it doesn't on this puzzle. I can't really adequately explain why, but okay, so just to make things easier for ourselves as well, what we'll do is just make sure the centers are lined up correctly with the pieces on the bottom. That's all looking good. So now what do we need to do? Well, we need to get the correct edge pieces into this middle layer. Okay, so what we're going to do is the 3x3 beginners method. So there's an algorithm to move a edge from a center position in front of you down to the right in front of you, and another to move it from the center to the left. And we're going to use those to place our edges one by one. You will have situations where you can't find the edge that you need in the top. And that'll be because it's in here somewhere. So you just take another edge, and swap them over by doing the algorithm that way. So first of all, we've got an edge here that we can place. So we want to line it up with the correct colored center, which is green. So we have a matchy colors here. And now what we need to do is place it in this slot to the left. So here's the algorithm we can use to do that. And of course, some of you will remember this from your early days of solving 3x3. So we're going to go U prime, L prime, U, L, and then U, F, U prime, F prime. And that has placed our edge right where it needs to go. So that's very good. And where's our next one? So we've got green and orange. So now we do the mirror image of that algorithm to place this piece into the slot to the right. So we go U, R, U prime, R prime, U prime, F prime, U, and F. Now we've got that edge in place as well. And actually, yeah, we've already got 3 in. So we just need to place this blue and red. So we'll line it up with red and do our algorithm to the left once more. U prime, L prime, U, L, U, F, U prime, F prime. Now we've got our middle layer and our bottom layer done. Perfect. So now we need to deal with our top layer. And this is where it can be a little bit confusing because what we really want to do is treat this top yellow layer as we would on a 3x3. And that means we need to go back to kind of orienting corners and all that kind of stuff as we would on a 3x3. This is where I tend to make stupid mistakes because I forget, you know, the shape of the puzzle that I'm dealing with and I do the wrong turn. So we'll see how we get on with this. First of all, we have the worst case, which is the .oll case here. So what do we want to do is we want to try and orient our edges first of all. So we don't have any oriented edges at the moment. So we'll go back to the 3x3 technique and we shall go F, R, U, R prime, come on, U prime, F prime, U2, F, U, R, U prime, R prime, F prime. And now we have a shape that probably most of you will recognize from the 3x3. So this kind of fish shape is what they teach you to recognize in the 3x3 beginners method. So in this particular case, we can rotate that with a U2, and then we can do the reverse soon, I guess it is. I don't really know the names of algorithms, I have to admit that. R, U2, R prime, U prime, R, U prime, R prime, and there we go. So we've resolved our shape shifting. And here we can actually forget about the top layer because that's going to get messed up anyway. We're going to do that at the end of the solve. So we've restored our shape to the full. And now we need to go back to our technique from the 3x3x2 and 3x3x4. Okay. So remember, once again, we don't want to rotate the puzzle. We want to keep it in the same orientation just to make sure that we do not mess up that middle layer. So we'll make orange our front side here and deal with it that way. So what do we have? Actually, our edges here on the bottom of our first inner 3x3x2 are actually looking correct. Orange, blue, red, and green. With white on the bottom, that's the correct color scheme. So let's just start placing our corners in. Remember, we're treating these 2 layers here as a 3x3x2 and just not disrupting the inner one. So we need a blue and orange to go there, which is here. R, U, R prime. There we go. So once again, you know, this layer here is going to get disrupted a lot back and forth, and that's fine. Just make sure that we keep that layer static and we move other things around it. So now we need blue and red. Do we have that? We do. All right. And here we need red and green, which is conveniently placed. There we go. And now the last one, we need green and orange. Again, with the opposite coloration. Boom. So now we have 2 layers out of 5 done. Looking good. Now on the top layer, we've got headlights in orange. The other 2 corners need swapping. So we shall go back to our technique from the 3x3x2 once again. R, U, R, U prime, R, U prime, D, R, U prime, R, U, R. Notice I sort of habitually bring this layer back into the correct orientation because it makes me less visually confused with what's going on. So now all of our corners on this layer here, at the top of our 3x3x2, those are in place, and we just need to swap our edges. We have 3 edges that are out. So once again, we'll do the simplest possible method of just having our 2 algorithms. R2, U2, R2, U2, R2, U2. So now we have just these 2 edges that need swapping. So R2U, R2U, R2U2, R2U2, R2U, R2U prime, R2. Woo! There we go. I gotta say, this is tiring to have my arms at full extension with this rather heavy puzzle. All right, so you can see we've got 3 layers done. So now we just need to do the top and bottom as if it was a 3x3x2, and then we're finished. So once again, our edges are nicely in place. So that's very convenient. We just need to get our correct corners in. So we've got green and orange here, which needs to go in this slot. So we'll do our standard insertion. There we go. And once again, we don't want to rotate the puzzle once we choose an orientation. So this time green is our front, and we won't stray from that. Now we need the blue, orange, and white corner down here. There we go. Now we need blue and red. Nope, that's green and red, so we'll do that one first just by rotating it over the correct slot. And blue, red, and white can go where it needs to be. 4 layers done, folks. We're almost done. Now, once again, we have headlights here. These 2 corners need swapping. So R2U, R2U prime, R2U prime, D, R2U prime, R, U, R. There we go. Okay, so once again, we have 3 corners that need to be swapped around. So we'll do it in the simplest possible way. So that's 1 set of corners fixed. Now we just need to swap these 2 guys. R2U, R2U, R2U2, R2U2, R2U, R2U prime, R2. And we're done. Excellent. So that's a quick example solve of the 3x3x5 from WitEden. Hope that was useful. Again, you know, the parity algorithm, we didn't run into parity on this solve, but the algorithm is exactly the same as on the 3x3x4. What you will have with this is you may have these edges on the side will need flipping, and that's, you do it exactly the same, basically. You know, mainly turning the top 2 layers and then doing some R's and F's in there. Very quick and easy, and it'll work exactly the same. Basically, it is a 3x3x4 with this additional shape-shifting step and a 3x3 solve at the beginning. I find it really enjoyable. I feel like that rounds out the solve a little bit, rather than just being a pure kind of stacking of 2 3x3x2s. It actually feels like a different puzzle than just its component parts, and that to me makes it really feel worth it and a great addition to the collection. 3x3x7, as you might expect, you can do the exact same techniques, but you're just doing an additional 3x3x2 solve, right? So once again, to restore the shape-shifting, we would solve as a 3x3, where our 3 layers are the bottom, the top, and this middle one. And then from there, we just make sure never to disrupt that middle layer as we do the rest of the solve. And then we do 3x3x2 on these 2, and then these 2, and then these 2. But yeah, I highly recommend both these puzzles for your collection. I think they're a really great time. They're not too expensive. I do wish that, you know, the quality was just a bit better. They didn't feel quite so clacky, quite so cheap. A bit more like the Fanshin, you know, but they are pretty sturdy. They've served me well. I've solved them many, many dozens of times, and I will continue to do so because they are lots and lots of fun. So that's it for me today. I think what I may do is come back and do a little kind of quick solve of the 3x3x6 and 3x3x7. Not because you really need the info, but I just enjoy doing it, and solving on camera is kind of a new challenge for me. And now that I have this new lighting, it kind of works a lot better, so I want to make use of it. From there, I think I'll move on to the 4x4x-ends, and I'll just keep building up hopefully a useful arsenal of solving techniques, starting with the cuboids, and then getting into more esoteric puzzles from there. So there you go. Let me know, once again, what you think in the comments. I hope if you do get convinced to go out and get these puzzles, that you have a great time with them. For those of you, by the way, that have the higher order puzzles in the 3x3x-end series from WitEden, I'd be really interested to hear your impressions. I'm looking to get the 3x3x8, which is fully proportional like these guys, the 3x3x9, which is not fully proportional, and then its follow-ups, the 3x3x10 and 11. I've heard that the ones above that are pretty much terrible, particularly the 3x3x15 and 17. But the 3x3x13 is kind of intriguing to me because I've heard mixed reports. So if anybody has any impression of that, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Anyway, in the meantime, look forward to seeing you all in the next video. And I hope you're staying healthy and happy and well as always. And I'll see you around soon enough. All right, take care and bye-bye.